On November 21st, 1992, Tom Monfils disappeared after a workplace dispute. A day later, his body was found in a pulp vat with a 50-pound weight wrapped around his neck. Over 30 years later, exactly who killed Monfils remains a mystery. Welcome to the Monfils 6 podcast. My name is Damon Schneider.
My name's Mike Putchell.
Tonight's episode is entitled Loved Ones' Letters. So keep in mind, the Mills directive called for cooperation with the law enforcement. It neither urged the workers to tell the truth nor reassured them that they had nothing to fear. Instead, they suggested if they went along with the authorities, their jobs would be safe. At 8:41 a.m. on December 12, 1994, Pete Delvo was escorted into the mill offices to be interviewed. Why do you think that the authors were so specific at that 8:41 a.m. time?
I don't know, maybe just to keep track of the time and dates, just to show that they have a record of this information.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, this case is every minute, it basically has to be recorded to get even some semblance of what happened down. Delvo had given a statement in the earliest days of the investigation. So that would have been in 1992. But here he was again 2 years later. Randy Winkler, in sole command of the case since January, was waiting with his partner, Ken Brodhagen, in the office. Delvo was reminded that he was being paid for work while he was giving his interview and that his cooperation was a job expectation. What do you think about that they told him his cooperation was a job expectation?
I think that that's a reasonable thing to say, but I think what ultimately happened is that their definition of cooperation is not really what cooperation actually means. To me, it seems the company wanted them to just go along with the police, whatever story that they were leading. And to me, that's not what cooperation would mean in this situation. To me, cooperation means that they are willing and open to speak with the police. That's it. And they're willing to tell what they know. That's what cooperation means. It has nothing to do with how their information will help the case or hinder it. It's just the fact that they are talking with the police. That's all that cooperation means to me.
There was no union or legal representation in the room. Delvo was alone with the detectives. Other mill workers that were being harassed included Steve Stein, Tom Hendricks, Jim Melville, and Al Keeley. Each took lumps but managed to keep their jobs. Others were not so lucky. Marilyn Charles and Randy Leapick both lost their jobs. John Menu was fired the day before the trial began. In the long run, it was just for the appearance of not cooperating. So we talked a little bit before that we started recording about John Menu being fired the day before the trial, because we brought up the fact that he could have played a sort of a key, witness on the stand. Do you think his getting fired maybe led him to not want to take the stand?
I was just thinking about that a little more deeply, and I would say there were other factors going on why he didn't testify, because if he was already fired, then really what does he have to lose to testify? Because we know just from past episodes when they talked about his knowledge, he was a witness that really would have been helpful for the defense. So I think there was other things going on as far as why he was not uh, testifying in the trial. I think there's more to it.
Mill worker Tom Hendricks was also able to push back on the facts and keep his job. In one point of Winkler's browbeating of him, Hendricks asked if Winkler was calling him a liar. Winkler asked why he had asked that. Hendricks responded, "Then I can tell you to kiss my ass. I don't lie for anyone about anything." So what did you think about that? Him using sort of that language to Winkler?
Well, it's good. It shows to me that he's being honest about the situation. He sees the tactics that Winkler was using. He sees how the mill is kind of treating the employees as far as the quote cooperation unquote. And I like it when people push back like that. It's good. I mean, he was really probably on a fine line right there when he said that.
Yeah, it kind of shows that Randy Winkler, his personality is very close to being sort of like a bully, and you have to. The only way you can beat back a bully is if sort of you punch back and get in their face, right?
Right. Yeah, you got to stand up.
Like Hendricks, Melville kept his job because what he kept on insisting was the truth, was in fact the truth. Hendricks didn't like the fact that Winkler was changing things around to make David Wiener's statement about Mike Johnson and Dale Bastian carrying something heavy like a ladder more plausible, and he pushed back. However, Jack Yusko showed up about this time and told Hendricks one more word would cost him his job. Hendricks backed off at this threat. Unfortunately, workers like Connie Jones, Brian Kellner, and Don Bollinger were not as steadfast. So, in terms of Connie Jones, Brian Kellner, and Don Bollinger, what would you say their personalities sort of were all like? Would you think that they were similar in personality?
I don't know. I mean, we don't know too much about Don. A little bit about Connie. I think really the problem here is it's not necessarily a personality question because these people wanted to protect their jobs. I think that's really what it comes down to. Like I said in the last episode, if people like Don, I think he was an elderly worker close to retirement, they didn't want to risk that because they wouldn't be able to find something else likely, and they had all their seniority there wrapped up. I mean, they had a good situation career-wise that they didn't want to mess up, and I think that's the case with a lot of people. Personality probably comes in a little bit just with if people just are unwilling to put up with that kind of behavior. But I don't know if it's necessarily about different personalities. I think it's more they value their jobs. They need the jobs.
So the authors state that, again, Jones, Kellner, and Bollinger let the company's directive turn them into targets. James Rivers' share of the blame began when they let Kutska know the original call came from within the factory. The authors state that the Monfils 6 were never silent and did not hold back information. They were painted as a group of thugs, as a part of a union conspiracy. That's the way the cops and the DA portrayed it, but don't believe it. These men have been talking all along, trying to get someone to listen.
What's remembered lives. Losing someone precious from our lives is the most painful event that one can endure. Seasons of Life Memorials is dedicated to making sure the person you lost is never forgotten. We work with you to help you craft a film about your loved one's life that can be viewed at the gravesite. We can also help you create a film about your very own life that can be viewed in the obituary section of your hometown newspaper. Imagine that, your friends, relatives, and neighbors viewing your own unique story and how your life truly did matter. Visit our website, seasonsoflifememorials.com, and follow us on social media today to start viewing what we can do for you.
And now we're going to read some of the letters from the Monfils 6 and the Monfils 6 loved ones, and we're going to alternate who is reading. So I'll begin with Dale Bastian Speaks. It's hard to write about these events. You're forced into prison where you don't want any of these people as your friend. They'll steal a stamp from you like they'd steal a purse from an old grandma. Even the guards will turn on you if the supervisors tell them to do so. I have been here for a long time for something I did not do. I want my children and my life back.
All right, and I'm reading a letter from Emily Baston, which is one of Dale's daughters. She writes, "My name is Emily Baston, and when I was just 10 years old, my father, Dale Baston, was tried for a crime he did not commit. I had to grow up with no father figure, no dad to come to my school events. I learned later in life why he was forced to leave. To a little girl of 10, all that I knew was he was taken away. I never thought for a minute that he left me and my 8-year-old sister on purpose, because he was the most wonderful father someone could ask for. He did everything with us. He would take us to fairs, parks, stores, restaurants, and car races. Everywhere he went, he would take us. Because my father has always been my role model, I chose to start working a career toward veterinary medicine. He taught me to be the humanitarian that I am. I never understood the allegations against him because it was so far from who he was. The murder trial disrupted our childhood wildly, and we didn't have much money. After my father was put in prison, my sister and I had to switch schools because of all the news coverage of the case."
So we talked a little bit before we started recording. Why do you think that we kind of stated that the incarcerated individuals, their statements and letters are a little bit shorter than the loved ones? And we kind of mentioned, or at least I did, that maybe that was a sign that they had sort of given up hope. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable assumption to make. I mean, these letters were written around the end of the book being written. Is that right? So would that have been around like 2007?
It was published in 2009.
Okay. So they had been in prison for over 10 years at least. Yeah, I could see things kind of bearing down on them, kind of saying, what's the point of saying too much? I could see that.
What did you think about Emily's letter and when she mentioned that they didn't have much money?
Yeah, I think that shows. I'm assuming she means because the trial drained everything from them. Is that your take on that?
Yeah, that would be my take. Dale Bastion's other daughter, Amber, speaks. My name is Amber Bastion. I am 19 years old. When I was 8 years old, my father was heartlessly taken out of my life. I have never been the same since. When I look back at my childhood, I see the perfect life. I was part of a loving family in a nice area. We had wonderful neighbors and friends, and we were grateful for each day. I went on like this until one dark and awful day when my life changed. My father was no longer a part of my life. He wasn't there to play his guitar and to sing to me. He would never be able to teach me math on his fingers or make me brush my teeth. We no longer had family vacations or rides in the country. I miss him so much. Instead of enjoying a worry-free life, I have to cope with the unwarranted reason that my father was gone and locked up. Had my dad been there for me when I needed him, I know these things would have never happened. I still experience days when it is difficult to get out of bed. Days when I dwell on the long, hard battle and the toll it has taken on our family. So, what part of Amber's letter struck you the most?
Well, when I was reading theirs, I just think how it kind of adds to the sadness that I mean, now there's no chance for any of that because Dale has passed away.
Dale had mental health problems later on in life. Is that right?
I don't know about that. I'm not sure. They said that he was released early because of declining health, but I don't remember if it was mental or physical.
I thought it might have been some sort of dementia, but. And now, Mike, Keith Kutzka.
The death of Tom Monfils was a terrible tragedy. However, from the beginning of the investigation, it was apparent the authorities weren't interested in holding the person responsible for his murder accountable. Their intentions were self-serving. It's true I stole 15 feet of wire from a dumpster at James River. It is also true that I denied stealing it. It is also true that I later took responsibility to stealing it. It's well understood that Tom Monfils made a call to the police telling them I was going to steal the wire and that I acquired a tape recording copy from the police once I found out about it from the management of James River. I discussed and got approval from the union representatives to request the police give me a copy of the call. The purpose was to file union charges and let the other employees at James River know who called the police. I had no reason to think that someone would take his life. To this day, I don't believe anyone on this planet would have known. As for me and the men who I was convicted with, we are innocent men convicted by state-sponsored perjury. The police, after 2 years of investigation, found a weak and insecure person who was vulnerable and forced him to tell a lie that they fabricated and spoon-fed into his mouth using threats and intimidation. To have him fired, to have his children taken from him, and to have him thrown into jail. The lie was to blame me for Tom Monfils' death because I made them look foolish for giving me that tape. The men convicted with me were collateral damage because they would not falsely incriminate me and lie for the police. The witness was forced and admitted his trial testimony was false and forced upon him by the police, but he is the only person who lied during the trial. The person who I believe killed Monfils also committed perjury. The prosecutor defended it. Indeed, the prosecutor stood in front of court and lied to the jury. Even more shocking, when the perjury was brought to the trial judge's attention, after the trial he condoned it by ruling it was not misconduct. If anyone thinks this is difficult to believe, all they have to do is a thorough examination of the case record. The people in this nation are under the assumption that we have the best judicial system in the world. I also thought that, but the truth is that is just a myth. The saddest fact of all of this is that the authorities' top priority was to satisfy their self-serving need for personal vengeance at the expense of the justice of Tom Monfils' family. They were the ones cheated most of all.
Memento mori. Remember you must die someday. However, your life can be remembered forever by contacting us at seasonsoflifememorials.com. We are here to teach you how to create a film about your life that can be seen at your future gravesite as well as within the obituary section of your very own newspaper. Contact us today at seasonsoflifememorials.com. So, Mike, can you talk a little bit about the podcast being an audio only option and how that might be appealing to people who are more introverted?
Sure. So we've talked in the past about all the different offerings that Seasons of Life Memorial has available to people. And again, one of the offerings we have is the podcast. And there's a lot of different advantages to this offering. But one of them that we are highlighting right now is just the fact that we know that not everybody is always willing to be on camera or wants to be on camera. And I can certainly attest to that from personal experience. It's changed over the years as I've gotten older, but I've become more comfortable with being on camera. But years ago, when I was younger, I never wanted to be on camera, and I wasn't comfortable with it, so I didn't like doing it. I would have been much more comfortable doing an audio-only version of a memorial if that ever came up. And again, we've talked before about how easy it is to set this up, to make arrangements for a podcast. Again, this can be done with people all over the world, really, as long as they have some recording equipment. I mean, just a simple webcam, computer, and an internet connection. This can be taken care of easily. So, again, just another convenience that Seasons of Life Memorials offers for people who are looking to memorialize people they care about in a truly unique way that is beyond long lasting.
And we're back. In Keith Kutzke's letter, he states, "The person I believe who killed Monfils also committed perjury." Who do you think he's referencing there?
You know, the only person I can think of would be David Weiner. I don't know. Who are you thinking?
That's what I was thinking too. Yeah. So Keith, you think, yeah, I guess Keith agrees sort of that he's someone who should have been looked at a lot closer.
Definitely. I think anybody, as he says, you just need to look at the case record. I think anybody who looks at that, as we've discussed and as the authors discussed, that David Weiner definitely needed a closer look, for sure.
So this is a letter from Keith Kutzke's wife, Artie. Keith and I met when we were 19 years old. Within a year, we were married. Our son followed in 1972. Both of us felt that we grew up together. It's so hard to think about how it turned our lives around because of Keith's wrongful conviction. We were just a normal family. When the sky fell down, it fell hard. Our granddaughters, who were twins, were born a month before they took Keith away. Keith was in prison in a far-off state when our grandson was born. He didn't get to see him until he was 3. There's no way to describe what the people in my life have been through. Nothing can prepare a person for the living hell our lives have become. The injustice has cost us in every way imaginable. There's nothing to do but to go on, just like the nightmare keeps going on. I guess you just get used to these things. At first, there were mean phone calls, and then hang-up calls, and then all the letters came. I had to do a lot of things I had not planned on doing. All the little things a person takes for granted in life are changed forever for me. Keith and I were supposed to grow old together. All this time has been wasted, and we will never get it back. I want the world to know that what has happened to our family should have never happened. Keith would have never been a part of the murdering of another human being. Yes, Keith did want Monfils to face the union for making his phone call, but he never harmed him in any way. What did you think about the part where she talked about the phone calls and the letters?
Well, I can imagine that. I think especially with Keith being kind of the, as far as in the media's eyes, the leader of all this. I think a lot of hate was directed towards him, uh, and of course his family. So I would imagine it would be terrible to be getting these things.
Do you think they're experiencing this now after having been released?
Experiencing what now?
Phone calls and letters and things like that?
I would doubt it. Maybe when he first was released, because that was last year, right? Like August of 23, if I remember.
Yeah, August of 23, yeah.
I think probably in that first month or so, they probably got some contacts. But at this point, I would think that it would be pretty much over, but maybe it isn't. Maybe there are still people that are thinking about this. I would imagine that I'm curious how they are getting on now that he's out. Because as far as we know, they are still married, right?
No, that was the one. They were one that got
That was the
divorced.
one? Okay, I thought, I remember
Yeah.
somebody did, but I didn't know if that was them. Well, never mind then. They're not, she's moved on, I guess.
And now Clayton.
Yeah, we have a letter from Keith's son, Clayton. It says here, I have dealt with depression, anger, despair, and frustration at a time of my life which should have been nothing but joyous. These things affected my ability to be a father and a husband. Now I have come to terms with what has happened out of necessity. I feel a great loss for me, my wife, my children. I am baffled that this travesty of justice has been allowed to go on for as long as it has. Still, there are people who know that my father is innocent, and I appreciate their efforts to free him.
What stood out to you in Clayton's letter?
Just the part about needing to kind of move on out of necessity. It's sad. It's deeply sad that you kind of have to, in some ways, forget about the troubles going on with your dad so you can focus on your own family. That's what stood out to me, is that, you kind of have to move on. So I hope that they've reconnected now that Keith is out.
Mike Johnson speaks. As a Christian man, I recognize the trials and tribulations of this world. I realize that as I continue to profess my innocence, I will never be allowed to leave prison. Already, this prison system has sought to withdraw my medium security classification and sent me to a maximum security institution because I continue to claim I was falsely accused, unjustly convicted of a crime I did not commit or have any knowledge about. I wait patiently for my Lord to rescue me. I know I did not hurt Tom Monfils. God knows I did not harm Tom Monfils. I can't understand why David Weiner pointed the finger at me like that. What do you think about that last sentence about why he can't understand why David Weiner pointed the finger at him like that?
I don't know. It's something I'd like to be able to talk with him more about because we kind of are suspecting why he pointed the finger, maybe to deflect his possible own involvement in things. What are your thoughts on that?
That would be the same. That that was probably the reason, is to deflect away from him.
Other than that, the other possibility would just be that David just picked somebody, because we know that he was getting a deal with the prosecutor for less time with his killing of his brother conviction. So he needed to tell them something to help out the prosecution. So maybe Mike and Dale were just people that he picked randomly. There was no reason.
So now Joan Van Houten.
Dearest Mike, I have been told they are done with the book now and have invited us to submit a plea to the readers about this case and for you. I don't know that I have ever done something so difficult. Where do I begin? How do I find the words powerful enough to transport them for their world, a world we thought we knew so well, into the nightmare that has become our life? What words could possibly begin to express how it feels to watch an innocent man, a decent and loving man, lose his life one slow day at a time? When you came into our lives, not even we realized how much we needed you. There was Mom, a young widow trying to raise 2 young daughters on her own. There was my younger sister, quiet and lost in the aftermath of our father's death. And then there was me. I was so afraid all of the time. I watched my father drift away from us as the cancer took him. I watched my mother cry night after night. I watched my little sister try to make sense of all this pain and suffering around her. Then there came you, this man who came to us self-assured, unafraid of the challenges, wanting to show us how wonderful and awe-inspiring the world around us truly was. You invited all of us into your life and gave us gifts beyond all measure. In time, my mother learned the virtue of patience, my sister the skill to observe the world around her and to understand. And me, I was given the gift of strength to not only endure but to overcome. Mike, I make no plea worthy of who you are and what you mean to us. I can only tell you how much we love you and need you and believe in the man who you are. And as I have been writing this letter to you, I was worried about doing right by you. I have faith that they will demand justice. They will demand answers and not just tainted theories. The people, Mike, will see the truth, and the truth will set you free. Please know that you are forever cherished and never forgotten. We love you and miss you every moment of every day.
How does Mike come across to you as in terms of his character from that letter?
Excellent. Seems a terrific human being. And even just from his own writings, I get a sense that he was a wonderful guy. Somebody, a quieter person, more reserved, but somebody that would be easy to talk to and that you could trust.
New episodes of the Monfils 6 podcast drop every other Friday. Please join us again. Thanks for listening.
Have you recently lost a loved one and want to hold on to their memory forever? We create individual and unique video-based obituaries that will allow anyone reading your local newspaper or visiting the gravesite to view the video and your memories of the loved one. Contact us today at seasonsoflifememorials.com.